Hi, everybody. Dr. Sanderson. Welcome back to Unit 2 of our course, where we're going to be talking about sports and organizational culture. And in many ways, that's very closely related to our topic in the last unit, which was ethics, because the culture that a sports organization has can kind of determine the ethical choices that they make or maybe don't make. So, if we're looking at, well, what is organizational culture exactly? While there's a lot of varied meanings about it, in general, it tends to be a system of shared values and beliefs that guide decision making in an organization and that influence the ways in which organizational members act. So, if you just think about, if you work somewhere or, you belong to ASU, what is the organizational culture of ASU? And how does ASU kind of live that culture? Or perhaps you could even say, how does an organization not live that culture? Because sometimes the culture an organization says it has and what they actually do are sometimes two different things. So, um, organizations can create a culture through things like policy, as well as written mission statements, and then again, how do they back that up? So, in their interaction with employees, customers, vendors, suppliers, sponsors, how do they embody or live that culture. Now, when it comes to sports, we often tend to think of organizational culture maybe more as focused on wins and losses. So, you might say, well, this team's winning, so they clearly have a good culture. When in fact, that may not be the case. They may be winning, but maybe the players don't like each other. There's a lot of controversy within the front office, within employees. So, that's not to say that winning and losing doesn't play a role in a sports organization's culture. It does, but there's a lot more to it than that. So, for instance, how do they handle issues? What do they, when something comes up, what do they do? Um, in the lecture, you'll look at, there's an article that talks to you about Enron, which was an energy company that experienced probably one of the worst scandals we've seen in American business in its history. And if you look at the organizational culture that Enron had, one of the issues with it was the senior leadership did not want to hear bad news. So any employee who identified a problem or an issue, they were basically told not to report it because they didn't want to be bothered with it. They only wanted to hear good news. And as we know, that's just simply not the case. Every organization has problems. Every organization has issues. And so, how willing are you to then, address those problems? That says a lot about your organizational culture, right? Now, that doesn't mean that organizational culture can't be changed. So, in fact, you're going to look at several examples in the readings where a team is looking to change their culture. So one that you're going to look at is the Miami Dolphins. So you may remember a few years ago, one of their players, Jonathan Martin, he reported that he was being bullied by another teammate, Richie Incognito, and it led to it was a major news story. The NFL did a major investigation, and there was a lot of concerns about the Dolphins' culture that led to this kind of allegation. So there was a new head coach hired this past year named Adam Gase, who came in and really tried to change the culture of the team. And so there's some articles that talk about how he did that. And then one of your main focus things in this unit is going to be looking at what happened at Baylor University. So, as most of you or some of you may know, they are coming out of a major investigation and a major scandal that had to do with football players committing sexual assault and kind of some other legal issues as well that apparently the head football coach Art Briles and some of the athletic director and some of the other senior officials didn't really do anything about, and it became a huge news story. And in fact, it's still in the news. Just kind of seems to not be going away, but it's really crippled Baylor. The university president was fired, the athletic director was fired, and the head coach was fired. And so now they're trying to come out of that, and they've hired. There's an article that you'll look at that talks about the new head coach, a guy named Matt Ruley, and how he's trying to change the culture of Baylor, which is a huge task for him to do. So, one of your assignments that you probably need to start working on in this unit, even though it won't be due till Unit 3, which is the next unit, you're going to look at Baylor's organizational culture. So, within the course resources, you'll see some videos and some documents, including investigation reports that kind of will tell you, hey, what went wrong here? And so what you want to do there is basically look at what happened at Baylor, kind of analyze what went wrong. Why did things get to that point? And then how can other athletic departments, if you're ASU, if you're Stanford, if you're Texas A&M, if you're Nebraska, how do you ensure that something like that doesn't happen within your athletic department, right? So start working on that, even though it won't be due until next week on July 19th. Then there is a discussion forum in this unit where you're going to be asked to share some thoughts on organizational culture in sport, including an organization that you think has a really strong a culture within sports. And so your initial post will be due by Sunday, which is July 9th, and then your two response posts will be due by Wednesday, July 12th. So looking forward to your thoughts on organizational culture and sport.